How's it going, everyone? My name is Casper, and in this video, we are going to be doing a relatively short chart reading of Napoleon. Here's his chart. He was born August 15th, 1796, on a Tuesday in Ajaccio, France, at 11 a.m. And according to astro.com, this chart time has a Rodden rating of C, so it's not perfectly accurate. Also, I'm really sorry I am sick. If you couldn't tell already by like my nasally voice, and I also have an ear infection, which freaking sucks. That's why I haven't been making videos that much lately because, well, I've just been like dying, so I don't really. I got sick after I went to the Pride Festival um early in June, and then yeah. Oh yeah, and I got this shirt at the Pride Festival. Look how great this shirt is. It says there's a fox on it, and the fox is just like for fox's sake. Isn't that hilarious? I think that's funny. If you don't think it's funny, then I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the astrology of Napoleon because we don't have all day. So the first thing about Napoleon that I think is very interesting, right? Because he's this emperor, he crowned himself as the king, which I think is honestly hilarious. It's so arrogant and so narcissistic and so bold and ballsy. And that's exactly what a Leo would do because his sun is at 22 degrees of Leo. And Leo is the lion, he's the king of the jungle. So all Leos kind of have this energy of wanting to be the king, wanting to be the ruler, wanting to be the person to empower. And this is especially true or heightened when the sun is at 22 degrees because I mean, there's a bunch of other degrees that are also important, but 22 degrees in astrology, especially, is like the kill or be killed degree. And so, usually, people who have their sun at 22 degrees, like, for example, Nietzsche, Donald Trump, I did their chart readings, and, their suns are at 22 degrees. And um, it makes a lot of sense because these people kind of have this mentality of do or die, or especially if it's their son, then it's like their ego. Their ego is just like, I need to have this or no one else can have it. Especially if your son is in Leo, it's kind of like, I need to be the king or else no one else can, or else life isn't worth living. So that's the first thing, is that Napoleon became emperor of France and he crowned himself. And I just think it's so funny because that is such a classic, stereotypical Leo son thing to do. That's just what Leos do. Leos have that bold and arrogant confidence where they kind of just take control, or they become leaders because they're the only people who are actually um, you know, crazy enough and confident enough to actually assume a leadership position. And this is especially true with Napoleon because if you look at his three main signs, um, he has a Scorpio ascendant, his moon in Capricorn, and his sun in Leo. And again, as we said, he has a Rodden rating of C for his chart, so he probably doesn't have a Scorpio ascendant. Although I think it makes a lot of sense because, well, first of all, it would put his sun in the 10th house, right? And so people who have their sun in the 10th house are often famous, or they invest a lot of time and energy into their reputation and their career. And of course, with Napoleon, he spent all of his time in politics. And I remember I watched a documentary on Napoleon, and he would spend literally the entire day, 16 hours a day, working on his life, doing politics, doing whatever. I mean, he was always working. He never really took a break to rest. Um, but anyway, going back to his three main signs, he has a Scorpio ascendant, Moon in Capricorn, Sun in Leo, and Scorpio, Capricorn, and Leo, in my opinion, are like the power signs. They're the signs that are very focused on power. So, um, because Scorpio likes to kind of like control things behind the scenes. Capricorn is the sign that climbs the mountain, and once they reach the top of the mountain, they achieve some kind of success or some kind of authority. And as I explained with Leo, Leo kind of just assumes a leadership position because they are the source of light and abundance, right? The sun is domiciled in Leo, right? So there's like a natural confidence that all Leos have. So that would make a lot of sense that he would become an emperor, or he would be driven to become an emperor because his main signs are very much focused on power. And because Scorpio ascendants are read into people. They understand people's motives very well. They're kind of like the psychologists of, stereotypically, Scorpio ascendants are the people that can read into people and figure out like their motives. And then Moon and Capricorn people, it's kind of interesting. Like, of all of the chart readings I've done, so many of them have Moon and Capricorn. And Moon and Capricorn people, I guess, are just interesting, but they're the kinds of people that really like to be in control. They like to have, again, they like to be in powerful positions. And what's interesting about Napoleon is that I don't really know if this is true or not, but from his chart you could say that he was probably a very emotionally repressed guy. He probably didn't really have time for emotions. Very authoritative. His mother, I didn't learn much about his mother. I know his mother was kind of like graceful and like a father figure for him, I believe. I don't know if I think his father passed away before he had a chance to grow up. Like, so his mother assumed an authoritative position. I could be wrong about that, but that makes a lot of sense because the moon often represents your mother in your chart, and his moon is in Capricorn, and it's opposite Saturn in Cancer, right? So Saturn in Cancer kind of shows like a restriction of emotion, someone who really struggles with emotion, takes their emotions very, very seriously. And then if it's also opposing the moon, it also means that someone, every time this person moves into their emotions, freaking computer, yeah, like just restrictive emotions because moon opposite Saturn. Um, the other really interesting thing, of course, Napoleon was very arrogant and like narcissistic, and because of his sun in the 10th house in Leo at 22 degrees. But also, you could hardly see it on the chart. You can't really see it, but his sun is making a square to Jupiter. It's a very wide square, but if right, it's a 7 degree, almost 8 degrees, so you probably couldn't even count it. But a sun square Jupiter shows someone who overextends their ego, right? Because Jupiter inflates everything. So if Jupiter makes a square to your sun, your ego goes out of control. You overexpand yourself. You take on challenges and goals that are beyond you. It gives you a sense of optimism and confidence that most people wouldn't have. Um, and then the other thing that's really interesting about his chart is that he has this Mars Neptune conjunction in Virgo in the 11th house, and Mars Neptune conjunction to me uh, is common in actors or people who are really good at putting on a show, because if Mars is how you move and Neptune is deception and illusion, then Neptune can kind of make your actions more than they appear or perceive differently. Like, I feel like a good example of where Napoleon expresses this energy is when that famous painting of Napoleon where he's riding a horse. Let me pull it up real quick. Napoleon right here, where he's riding a horse, right? And this is actually not true. This isn't a real painting. because at the time that this painting was conceived, Napoleon was actually riding a donkey. So, but the artist, or Napoleon had the artist paint him on a horse. So I feel like that's a good example of not only Leo just like pumping everything up, but I think it's an example of Mars conjunct Neptune, where you're kind of showing yourself in this way that isn't true. Um, and also in the 11th house, which is kind of like it's the house of influence and connections and community. Like I felt like Napoleon certainly was famous and had an impact since he has a lot of planets in the upper half of his chart. And on the left side, you definitely see leaders and famous people who have a lot of planets on the left side of their chart and in the top half. So this is especially true of Napoleon. Um, and kind of, I missed this, but not only is the sun in the 10th house really good for like Donald Trump has the same thing. It's a little bit different. I mean, Donald Trump has his sun in Gemini, but his sun is also in the 10th house. Um, and then Donald Trump has like Mars in his first house, and then Napoleon has his Jupiter in the first house. Jupiter in the first house, gives someone who with like a big personality, very big, like someone who really pops out, who really shows a lot of promise or right, because Jupiter is big and inflationary. So and I just remember in the documentary how Napoleon was able to make a huge impact on so many people that he talked to, and wherever he walked there was kind of like this god energy that surrounded him, right? This powerful force, right? Right, and Nietzsche even spoke of Napoleon as kind of like the Uberman, the Ubermensch. Like he talked very highly of Napoleon. I don't know if Napoleon is actually an Ubermensch, but especially because I feel like Napoleon is kind of just a ruthless, bloody dictator, very similar to Hitler. So I don't really understand I don't know why people talk so highly of Napoleon and then they talk so badly about Hitler, because I kind of see them as the same thing. Of course, you could say Hitler is much, much, much worse. You see this kind of like Mars Neptune conjunction, which is about kind of putting on a show. It's trine Uranus, which is kind of like shocking. This ability to be able to shock and to um, be bold. And then this trine Neptune as well. So you see this grand trine where Pluto is very, it's the planet of power and transformation. So Napoleon has a lot of planets that just really help him. Well, not planets, but he has a lot of placements that really help him to stand out as a character and to kind of put on this show. And I feel like the last thing that I would say that's very interesting, I think Leo is the sign of generals, like military generals. Like when I look at Donald Trump's chart, I almost imagine he would have been a very good general because he has some strong Leo placements. And it's the same with Napoleon. He has this Mercury conjunct MC in Leo, and Napoleon was famous, and I think what really kept him going as emperor or allowed him to maintain power was the fact that he was this excellent military general. And it's interesting because like Mercury is like strategy, thinking, writing, and communication. And so like this Mercury is right on his MC, so it's almost like Napoleon had this gift of intelligence. Like he was very smart, but because it's in Leo, it's almost like this ability to lead, this ability to strategize, this ability to kind of move people around in a way that is beneficial. And so yeah, I think that's the main stuff with this chart that I think is interesting or worth noting. And yeah, thanks for listening.